So welcome to Cryptocito episode 2. I'm joined by Rushi, who is the co-founder at Movement Labs. And Movement Labs, what they're basically building is a network for move-based modular blockchains. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So we're going to be finding out what all that is about. The MoveVM, the Move Virtual Machine, which some of you might be familiar with from Aptos and Sui. It's actually a code base, I think, that was originally developed by the team at Facebook.
Yep.
So yeah, and how that's all connected also to Cosmos. The modular framework is what we're going to be learning today. So thanks, Rishi, for being here and for doing this. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. I love Dubai. My first few days, Cito invited me, Shisha, and I had a great time.
You're based out of New York normally, right?
Based out of New York. Nice.
And how do you compare? This is your first time Dubai, right?
My first time to Dubai.
How do you compare Dubai with New York?
Well, there's a rat in my apartment in New York, and I haven't seen one rat yet in Dubai. And Cito's apartment is pretty clean, so that's the first thing. Second thing, it just seems like very good, like crypto Web3 culture. People here are generally like bullish on crypto in New York. Half the people are like, "Is crypto? Does it exist?" Other half are like not really sure what's going on. But Dubai seems like the hub for innovation for crypto, Web3, and blockchain. So happy to be here.
Yeah, honestly, I think there's a lot going on here. There's always people traveling through. There's a lot of events also happening here. Yeah. We actually have one on December 9th, Atom Dubai. I think you're going to be gone by that, but
I'll be back.
You'll be back. That's good. Yeah, hopefully you can make it there. But yeah, it's a good place. But yeah, let's start with trying to understand what you guys are building. First off, what is the MoveVM? Maybe can you just talk a little bit about the origins and why it's so unique and such a important element in crypto?
Yeah, so I'd say a few years back, I want to say 2 years ago, Facebook wanted to dip its toes into the Web3 ecosystem. So we're like, Facebook essentially wanted to build a programming language. They wanted a stable coin to be used throughout the Facebook app, which is huge news back in the day. This is Facebook with millions, potentially billion users, the biggest social network internationally. So in theory, you could use a stable coin to send money from India to the United States to Australia, all within the app. But they didn't want to use Ethereum. They didn't want to just use Solidity because they realized if they were going to build this meta network in this huge app, the performance for Ethereum and modern day blockchains would not be able to keep up with Facebook's billion users, right? Second thing is if they're going to be housing like billions of and potentially trillions of user funds on this app, they can't be on the EVM where there's every year $4 billion lost in smart contract hacks. We saw the DAO attack, we saw the Curve attack, and pretty much like every week that like PeckShield puts like a new, hey, this protocol got exploited, this protocol got exploited. Facebook can't have that. So they put $1 billion in research for this new programming language. It was called the DM project, and really wanted to see Web3 adopted to modern day blockchain ecosystems. However, with regulations and increasing FUD around that, they can't disband the project. It's split off into two great ecosystems, Aptos and Sui. Both are well funded, raising over $300 million each, combined market cap around $15 to $16 billion at the moment. So it's very interesting seeing that it started off as a Facebook project, then came into Web3 ecosystem. And essentially what the MoveVM is, it's a parallelized Rust-based virtual machine, except it uses the Move programming language. The two main benefits of Move are performance and security. On performance side, because you have parallel execution and local fee markets, you can now notch up to 150,000 TPS. When gas spikes during times of high usage, like order books and whatnot, gas is always relatively low, next to nothing. And B, more so on security, because the constant formal verification is built in, which protects against all these hacker attacks. I'll get more into that, but
yeah. And like you mentioned, Facebook was the inventors of Move, right? But then I also remember the times when then like Mark Zuckerberg had to appear in hearings and basically explain themselves, like what they're building, why.
Yep.
And I think as a result of that, so pretty much regulatory scrutiny, which is also what happened now with Binance and Kraken is also under regulatory scrutiny. They basically entirely dropped that project, right? And I think out of that, former DM engineers then took the code base, and it's also fully open source.
It's fully open source.
Fully open source. And started Aptos and Sui, right? So can you maybe talk a little bit about those two projects? Are they both like ex-Facebook engineers? And how did you first like get into this? Were you also part of that in the early days, or?
So Aptos and Sui both came from the DM team. I think Mo, Avery, Sam, Demir, Evan, all the guys from the ecosystem were originally at Facebook. They both, Aptos was a different team. It kind of split off into two sectors. Aptos launched first. It's more of a direct comparison to what the DM project was. They kind of took it and got a market first. Sui took more time, have a different consensus model. They made Sui move. So actually, for those who aren't familiar, there's two styles of move now. There's Aptos move, which is more aligned with the DM project and originally kind of mythology. And you have Sui move, which they further iterate upon, and it has different account-based models that's more analogous to Sui. For us, we were builders of the ecosystem. So around August of last year, I was building Aptos. I was like, cool, Facebook has this $1 billion programming language. It came to blockchain, was building up a lot of hype. So I was the engineer for the first DEX on the ecosystem called Kairos. My co-founder was the first yield aggregator called Sate. So we were early builders and just really love the Move language. From an engineering point of view, I spent hours, tens of thousands of dollars in auditing fees, and still got wrecked many times with hacker attacks. And this was like the first time I was able to code and be confidently ship it to mainnet and be like 90% of the time, or like 90 to 100% of the time, like it's going to be secure and have security in my assets.
And I think you are also, so you're an engineer by trade, with your background. And I guess before discovering the MoveVM, you were working on Solidity mostly, or?
So I was working in Solidity, like just doing EVM engineering. And it was very difficult for me at the time. A, it was difficult to pick up, and B, it was a constant process of auditing the code. Say, for example, you're defining variables, you have to make sure that there's no integer overflow as possible. You essentially need to keep auditing the code, and it takes months, potentially years to ship code. With Move, you can kind of code a lot of the variables intact. I won't get too technical, but it allows you to ship product much faster because the security is taken care of. If the code isn't secure, the code simply won't run. While in Solidity, if you have insecure code, it's still going to run. And then a year later, someone's going to poke the system and take out millions of dollars. And you're going to be like, damn, it's got wrecked.
And what is, so Sui and Aptos, they're both live. I think they also have like multi-billion-dollar valuations according to CoinGecko. What do you think? Because to be honest, like for me as an outsider, like I'm deep in Cosmos, and obviously I heard the Sui and Aptos launch, but I haven't heard much since then. Like, how do you view the current, like these two chains or ecosystems today? And what's maybe, is there any like bottlenecks right now for Move to gain real mass adoption? Because to be honest, maybe I'm missing something. I haven't really heard too much like user adoption applications that people are using.
Yep, that's fair. I think with any new monolithic layer one, when you start up a new chain, it takes a while to see adoption, right? Solana took a few years to kick up, and then it became Solana. Same with Aptos and Sui. The bet is you have ex-Facebook teams, they have a bunch of capital for the system, and over the next few months and years, we should see actual adoption use cases come out of that. I think the issue, especially because they both launched in a bear market, is that it's hard to attract users from other systems. If I'm a current Ethereum ecosystem, Cosmos ecosystem, it's very difficult for me to have a new wallet, leave my entire chain, use new projects, go to a new community. It's a fragmented experience, so there's a higher barrier to entry. I think what we're focused on, and we'll get more into that, is what we're now seeing with the modularity thesis is that we can take these existing VMs and technologies and bring it to where users are. I think Eclipse did a great job with that. Obviously, Solana has been a monolithic layer one, and they're doubling down on that, especially with the recent rally. But Eclipse is saying, look, the Solana VM is great. Let's bring it to Ethereum and IBC enable it and bring out Celestia. And more people can use the Solana VM without needing to leave the ecosystem. So I think that's been the biggest bottleneck for Aptos and Sui. Great technology, great founders, they're going to kill it. But for users in Ethereum and Cosmos, it's been very difficult for them to complete migrate tech stacks and use a new software.
Yeah, and you also just dropped the word of the past couple of months that I think everyone is now on crypto Twitter has heard about, which is this modular era, especially since Celestia launched. People hear it left and right. You also said monolithic is basically the counterpart to it. But can you maybe explain for those people that have no clue what modularity means? What does it actually mean?
Modularity is the ability to pick what layers you are in your blockchain. Monolithic blockchains are simply single-state machines that can execute, and developers don't really have the ability to say what execution layer, what programming language, what settlement layer I'm using, what DA layer I'm using. They kind of get the option and say, use it or don't bother. With modularity, you finally have options. And that's kind of what Celestia and a few other folks in the space have been really pushing. The ability to say, whatever VM you want, MoveVM, EVM, Solana VM, Fuel VM, Wasm, whatever you want. Choose whatever settlements. You can settle on Ethereum. You can settle on Celestia itself. You can settle on Tendermint. You can settle on Binance, Smart Chain, whatever you want. You can choose whatever DA you want. So you can choose Celestia if you want. You can choose Eigen DA. You can choose Aveo. You can choose whatever layer suits your use case. So we've seen a lot of rollup service providers come up with different games, shooting different tech stacks. We've seen a bunch of different providers like Arbitrum and Optimism come out with their own rollup frameworks. So what we're seeing right now with the modular thesis is literally build whatever. You can choose what stacks are best for use case, because some people don't need fast chains. If you're a DeFi app that's like liquid staking focused and you're an app chain, you probably don't need tens of thousands of TPS. It's liquid staking. But if you're a game or a mobile app, you probably want lots to throughput.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand. So what modularity basically does is separates the execution layer or environment from the settlement layer, right? And then there's another term that now is on everyone's timeline, which is data availability, which I think a lot of people have also a hard time. And even like technical, I'm not technical at all. So I had to really like dig deep into it, trying to understand how this works. But can you maybe explain like what is data availability?
Yeah, I think for typical Ethereum data availability, it's like when you post transactions and store it on chain. Right now, you have to retrieve all the data from a full node, which is pretty expensive. Right now, if you're doing transaction on Ethereum, it can cost up to $7 to $8 in bull markets, or high usage time is like hundreds of dollars, potentially thousands. With alternative DA layers, now you can store data to like light clients, and you don't need to retrieve the entire data. Instead, you can retrieve small pieces of the data and then recover it when the time is needed. So you can actually verify the data instead of retrieving the entire full node. What essentially that means is you can cut down all the costs that you see with Ethereum DA. It's around 90%, 89% of the costs with the high gas fees are due to high DA costs. So Celestia, Eigen DA, these other providers provide alternative layers where users and transaction data can be stored, and you can retrieve it whenever you need it without accessing the full node, which is pretty expensive.
So what you guys are building is basically a framework for the MoveVM. So I think the Move is like a core component of what you guys are doing. But then you're also building blockchains, right? I just read like on your website, preparing for this a little bit as much as I could. M1, which is the first chain that you guys have built, which is basically using the Avalanche Snowman, I think it's called, consensus with the Move virtual machine. And then does it also use other components, or how does that work? Does Celestia also come into that, or how does it work?
Going back a year where we started building, we were looking at what ecosystem to deploy on. And being a Rust-based VM, you only had two, maybe one real option. Avalanche had a Rust SDK, which allowed Rust-based VMs to deploy. Cosmos didn't have a Rust-based VM. They had Cosm Wasm, which is technically Rust-based, but we didn't have the adapters to adapt the MoveVM. So we really had two options: either deploy directly in a subnet, which had out-of-the-box libraries for us to build on, or kind of build our own modules. We had to build a Move module for Cosmos SDK, which was more difficult, but we could do it. Ultimately decided on Avalanche. They gave us a lot of support. What's really interesting about Avalanche is the Snowman consensus, which can be used not only for layer 1s, but specifically for layer 2s as well. Snowman consensus is instant finality, very decentralized, low hardware network, about 1,400 validators, where anyone can stake their native token. So for example, Move, you can stake the native token and secure the network. So for M1, which is currently in DevNet, it's just a layer 1 blockchain built using Snowman consensus with the MoveVM on top of that. It's also even compatible, which we'll get more into later, but that's the main thesis.
And then are you also building applications yourself, or?
So we're focused more on infrastructure, building like kind of the underground. We're incubating and supporting projects and investing in projects that are consumer, DeFi, gaming apps on top of us. We've seen a lot of great community upwork. So we just saw Perps launch 2 days ago on a network. We have wallets built. We have DeFi protocols, gaming protocols. It's pretty good.
So are those the verticals that you focus on? Because you said earlier, like your modularity basically allows you to optimize your environment for specific use cases, right? So is DeFi, GameFi, is those?
I think we're starting off like every chain needs a good DeFi ecosystem just to bootstrap it. That's the first main focus. But I think what's really interesting is we have a great consumer angle. So a great example is Stars Arena. It was a big SocialFi app on Avalanche. It was building up traction. It was a small dev team, and after 2 weeks, got hacked for a security bug. the way we approach it is we want developers to be able to deploy code as quickly as possible to mainnet without worrying about security. So the same Stars Arena app could deploy the Solidity code. Our VM would verify the contracts are secure, make sure it's deployed properly, there's no bugs, and then deploy and execute it. So the consumer angle is very interesting, where people can deploy social apps, payments apps, and deploy within 1 month instead of waiting a few months, keep auditing it, pay up to $100,000 to $200,000 of auditing fees. So I think we're targeting consumer apps in the short to midterm.
Okay. And then, so that's M1. And then you guys also just had an announcement with Celestia to build M2, which is another chain. So tell us what M2 is.
M2 is the first MoveVM rollup on Ethereum that leverages Celestia for data availability. What's interesting is that we're actually able to build on top of M1, use M1 as a shared sequencing unit, and power the first Ethereum rollup. So how tech stack looks is you have the MoveVM execution layer, you have Ethereum as settlement, you have Celestia as DA, and you can use our shared sequencing unit. So we have no downtime, the token has value accrual because you stake the token, and you have a very high throughput chain with next to nothing gas fees on Ethereum.
I also saw like a tweet from Mustafa, the founder of Celestia, who said something along the lines that like eventually every user will have its own rollup or like its own chain, right? What is your take on that?
I think we're very early for that. We've seen like this running jokes on Twitter that it's a new L2 every day. I think we should wait. Like it makes sense that like having a lot of rollups of different use cases makes sense. They're probably too early for each user to have their own rollup. It kind of is like, why does each user need their own website? When you're using a website right now, you probably use Google, you use Amazon, websites that everyone else uses, but you also have a personal website sometimes that for a small amount of use cases and small amount of traffic. So I think that's the end game for this, right? You'll have those large rollups like Arbitrum, Optimism, which attract the most amount of users and have most of the volume. But there's also use cases whether it's like Facebook's rollup, or it's Twitter's rollup, or it's YouTube's rollup, and maybe I want my own personal rollup for my own personal fans. So I think that's kind of what Mustafa was hinting at. We're probably a few years out from that and looking to see more consumer apps. What's interesting about us is when you launch a general purpose rollup, right now on Arbitrum, Optimism, when there's a lot of users on the network, the gas fees go up crazy to the point where it's pretty much unusable. With MoveVM and parallelized VMs, we can actually cut those gas fees down and be more secure.
Thank you. Cool, yeah. And I don't know, I think like, you know, Cosmos, obviously what I do is mostly focused on Cosmos and the ecosystem. Celestia is a Cosmos SDK built chain that also implements IBC. And I think Nick actually said this once on my channel that Celestia itself is an app chain, a Cosmos app chain for block space. And I think everything that also you guys are doing and the whole L2 movement and all these kind of things basically proves this app chain thesis in general, right? That there's like, we need more modularity and more customizability. DYDX also recognize that and also build their own chain now. What is your whole like long-term vision? I think you already hinted at it, but the end game for crypto, basically full modularity and full sovereignty, or what is your views on that? I
think there's a world where modularity and monolithic chains both win, which is why like when we're working with Aptos and Sui, we actually see them as partners. For Aptos and Sui, their main mission is nurturing the Move language, generating adoption for this new technology that they spend so much time, effort, and resources to build. I would say monolithic chains are better for payments, better for intentionality, for simplicity. If you're a developer and you don't want to worry about tech stack, you just want to use the fastest chain, you're probably going to use Solana, Aptos, and Sui, something like that. If you want straight DeFi, straight yields, you're probably going to use Mainnet Ethereum, where all the TVL is in the world. You might even use Bitcoin because that's where like the market is, right? Modular chains, I would say, are for more the nuanced user and developer that want specific use cases. So say you're a bank, you're a custom app, you have a lot of users, and you're like, maybe Ethereum isn't right for me, or Solana isn't right for me because it's downtime, whatever. I can generate my own chain with a role provider, IBC enable it so I can communicate with other chains and still tap into osmosis, still tap into Juno, still be part of a network, and then customize my VM for what I need, customize my DA layer for fees. So I think there's a world where actually modular and monolithic chains both win. Monolithic more for cultivation of languages, new innovations, simplicity, modularity for use cases, and nuanced stuff.
Interoperability is another big theme, I think, where Cosmos as an ecosystem is currently the leader, at least in my view. with IBC, that's now in production for 2.5 years, routed, I think, over $30 billion in value. What is your views on like interoperability? Because I think oftentimes like you have new ecosystems pop up and then they end up being isolated and not compatible with the rest of crypto, right? So what is your views on that? And are you guys also IBC compatible or?
I'm an IBC maxi. I think IBC is probably one of the best innovations in blockchain tech. It's beautiful. It's non-partial, so there's no maxi culture around it. I mean, I love it, but it's like no one disagrees if IBC is good or bad. It's used in Cosmos. It's coming to Ethereum with what Union's doing. It's coming to Avalanche with like what Landslide's doing. Coming to Polkadot with Composable. It's coming to every ecosystem, and you don't need to like say like, oh, it's not compared to Wormhole, coming to Layer 0, other bridging providers. Everyone kind of agrees that IBC is a great standard and kind of emulates that. So when we're building new chains and ecosystems, we prioritize interoperability, because if you launch a new chain and no one can use it, it's not compatible with any wallets, you can't bring liquidity over, you're not going to attract users because the user experience is quite awful. So something we're focused on right now is actually making the MoveVM IBC compatible. We're working on the Move Modular, working with the folks at Polymer and Union on that. The second thing is also like working with different bridging providers. So we built the first Hyperlane Move module, so we're fully compatible with Hyperlane. Also working with Wormhole and Layer 0. So working with all the bridging providers, making IBC compatible, making it as easy as possible to use your chain is really the priority.
Nice. Okay, so you're building chains, you're building this framework, you're connecting to the rest of crypto.
Yep.
Are you also going to have your own coin, your native token, or how does that work?
We'll have our own native token. So to secure the network, you stake the native token, Move, MOV, and you pay gas fees eventually in the native token, just like any Layer 2 or Layer 1. And
is that token, because you mentioned earlier, M2 is built on top of M1, is that like one token for the entire movement ecosystem? Or?
So we have one token for the entire ecosystem. No matter what chain you're on, what ecosystem you're building on, you don't want like 8 different tokens, which fragments the user experience. You have one token to power and secure the entire network.
Okay, and of course, I have to ask, I mean, you know, we like to break alpha here sometimes. So TIA just launched. I think since you guys are also building or using Celestia for data availability, people are now obviously considering what might be an airdrop that comes up. Do you have any plans in the works to roll out MOV? Is that the coin ticker? MOV tokens to, I don't know, TIA community, the Cosmos community, maybe the Avalanche community?
We're going to be having a huge community around, giving large airdrop. I think something that we prioritize is you need to make sure the community's involved, they make money, they're able to be a little degenerate. So the Cosmos community is core to what we're doing, the Celestia community is core to what we're doing, the Ethereum community is core to what we're doing, Avalanche. So we'll be targeting all the different ecosystems. I think Celestia did a great job with their airdrop, really allowed everyone from every ecosystem to participate, and launched at a pretty fair price. So I think that's what we're going to be emulating, giving a majority of supply earmarked for community initiatives and a good amount of supply initiated for a nice airdrop per.
Nice, that's good to hear. I think what's interesting about the Celestia airdrop is that, I mean, I think their last round where they raised was like at $1 billion, and I think everybody was like, "This is way too high. We're just in this bear market right now." And then the token dropped and it just went to like $7.5 billion. So everybody who got the airdrop was super happy. I think the only concern some people had was the claim window was too narrow and people missed it. So I think that's maybe something that, I don't know, maybe could have been done better, but also maybe it's part of the design to like only incentivize people that are active, right?
There's also a lot of regulation stuff that are taking place. So like the first priority is not to go to jail. I would assume. Yeah.
But cool. So what's the timeline right now? Are you what phase are you in right now? Are you in fundraising? Are you in building? How close are you to shipping and launching?
So we just closed a round. We have DevNet fully live at docs.movementlabs.xyz. Incentivized testing in January. It's incentivized for a reason. And then mainnet shooting for end of Q2, Q3.
Okay.
So very soon.
Nice. Yeah. I think that's a good time to launch, like when the bull run is coming back.
When you all have bags.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So if people are listening now, whether developers, retail community, what would you say is the next step if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I think 2023 was the year of DA. You have Celestia, DA, Veil, all these players really rising up even near recently. I think 2024 is, as we've observed, is going to be the year of execution layer and the VMs. We've seen Solana VM come up. We now have the MoveVM. We're seeing TypeScript VMs, different WASM VMs. It's clear that EVM has been broken for a while and no one wanted to do anything with it. For the first time with Modularity, we can now bring better VMs to Ethereum. So first of all, I would encourage you to start using other chains. Use Solana, use Aptos, use Sui. Be willing to step outside of Ethereum because you'll realize that the user experience is a lot better. If you're developers, try picking up different languages, Rust. Even if you're outside of crypto, Rust is now becoming huge in AI, being huge in healthcare. It's going to be the standard for programming in the next 5 to 10 years. So if you want to make money, I would encourage you to learn Rust. And yeah, I think 2024, we're going to see a lot more VMs come up, and it's going to be the year of the VM.
Nice. And also, before I let you go, I think last time we met and had a shisha together, you told us a funny story about Sunny and like how you knew him before, and he pilled you also a little bit with Cosmos. What's your relationship with Sunny?
Yeah, I think my mom worked for his dad a while back. I mean, I was just a kid. I was playing Minecraft in his dad's office, and he was always like a role model to me, always doing cool stuff in Cosmos. And now that I'm here, it's great to be around like Cito and like-minded and like the OG Cosmos people.
Did he shill you hard into Cosmos, or?
I don't think he did. I think my mom kind of did. He's like,
nice.
Sunny's doing this cool thing. Check it out. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out, Mom.
Nice.
And then worked out.
Nice, cool. Okay, so yeah, if you want to learn more, I think you can also follow these guys on Twitter. And yeah, if there's any follow-ups, also leave it under the comments. And yeah, this was really cool. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.